London didn't wake up to the story. It was already waiting. At exactly 5:17 a.m., a file appeared inside a closed online forum known for tracking royal movements and internal palace chatter. No logo, no source, just a single sentence attached to a blurred image. She's 23, and she looks like Beatrice. Within minutes, the image sharpened, the name surfaced, and the speculation detonated. A young woman called Lindsay, American-born, auburn-haired, sharp-jawed, with features that online sleuths claimed mirrored the royal bloodline too closely to ignore. Screenshots spread faster than fact-checks could catch them. Side-by-side comparisons flooded timelines. Cheekbones, eye tilt, chin structure, and then came the document that pushed it over the edge. An unverified birth record dated 2003, listing an unnamed father and a U.S. citizen mother. No seals, no confirmation, but by sunrise, the rumor had already outrun reality. And what made it explosive wasn't the claim itself, it was who the internet decided it pointed toward. The speculation didn't drift. It snapped directly toward Prince Andrew. Online timelines resurfaced his movements from the early 2000s, highlighting gaps, private travel, and a summer in southern France that had never been fully explained. Old yacht photos reappeared. Archived guest lists were dissected. Every inconsistency was treated like confirmation. This wasn't about proof anymore. It was about plausibility. Andrew's name carried too much unresolved history, too many unanswered questions, and too much public distrust to withstand another shadow. And when a rumor needs gravity, it doesn't look for innocence. It looks for vulnerability. Within hours, headlines shifted from "Who is Lindsay?" to "Could this be real?" And the palace still said nothing. No denial, no clarification, just silence, which in royal terms has always been the loudest possible response. By mid-morning, every major outlet was aware of the claim, yet none had confirmation strong enough to publish outright. And still, Buckingham Palace remained unmoved. No press secretary at the gate, no legal warning shots, no friendly background briefings. That silence became the story, because the royal machine has never been slow to shut down falsehoods when it wants to. The absence of response didn't prove anything, but it ignited everything. Commentators began asking the question they're never supposed to ask. If this is completely false, why not kill it immediately? Behind closed doors, insiders whispered about containment, not correction, about letting the storm burn itself out instead of feeding it oxygen. But storms don't burn out online. They multiply. And by refusing to speak, the palace had effectively handed the narrative to everyone else. Then another name entered the conversation, and the temperature spiked. Meghan Markle. Not as the subject, but as the supposed connection. The theory, unproven and entirely speculative, spread with brutal speed that Lindsay's claims somehow intersected with Meghan's past, her time in Hollywood, her pre-royal relationships, and her long-running tension with the institution she married into. No evidence supported it. None was required. Meghan's public image had already been polarized beyond repair, making her the internet's favorite villain in any royal mystery. Forums framed her as silent, strategic, calculating. Others dismissed the idea as absurd character assassination. But once her name was attached, the rumor stopped being about lineage and started being about motive. And motive, real or imagined, is what keeps people watching. Across the Atlantic, the Sussex household offered no response either. No spokesperson, no social media clarification, just closed gates and unanswered calls. That quiet only deepened speculation around Prince Harry, who many viewers framed as trapped between two collapsing worlds. Online narratives painted him as unaware, or worse, the last to know. Clips from past interviews resurfaced, his discomfort discussing family, his emphasis on secrecy, his warnings about what happens behind palace walls. None of it confirmed anything, but it didn't need to. The story was no longer about Lindsay, or even Andrew. It had become about whether the royal family was hiding something again, and whether Harry had escaped the institution just in time, or too late. As the rumor evolved, focus quietly shifted away from DNA and toward finances. Commentators began asking who benefits when a story like this explodes. Who gains leverage? Who gains attention? Who gains silence? Allegations surfaced online suggesting legal consultations, media positioning, and strategic timing. but no verified records supported them. Still, the idea stuck, because modern scandals aren't powered by secrets anymore. They're powered by logistics, by who pays, who waits, and who moves first. And when royal money enters the conversation, it changes the stakes entirely. This wasn't framed as a family issue anymore. It was framed as an institutional one, and institutions don't panic unless something threatens control. By the end of the day, the rumor had hardened into belief for millions of viewers, not because evidence appeared, but because nothing stopped it. The palace had lost control of the tempo. Every hour without comment felt deliberate, calculated. And that's when analysts began warning that the damage wasn't coming from truth or lies, but from erosion. Trust doesn't collapse in explosions. It thins out quietly until nothing is left. Whether Lindsay's claim was real, false, exaggerated, or invented almost stopped mattering. The real crisis was that people believed the royal family was capable of hiding it. And once that belief takes root, it doesn't go away. By nightfall, one question dominated everything else. What happens if someone finally speaks? Because silence can only hold for so long before it fractures. If evidence surfaced, the monarchy would face its worst credibility test in decades. If nothing surfaced, the absence itself would still poison public trust. Either way, the storm was no longer external. It was inside the walls. And what the public didn't know yet, what they couldn't see, was that the next move wouldn't come from the internet, or the tabloids, or even the accused. It would come from within the family itself. While the public waited for a statement that never came, quiet shifts were already underway inside royal circles. Insiders began leaking hints, not confirmations, just movement. Meetings rescheduled, financial reviews accelerated, access quietly restricted. To the outside world, nothing had changed, but internally, it felt like a pressure valve tightening. Observers noticed that Prince Andrew had vanished from even his usual low-profile routines. No sightings, no scheduled appearances, no friendly photographs dropped to steady the narrative. It wasn't an admission, but it wasn't normal either. In royal crises, visibility is often used as reassurance. This time, disappearance became the signal. And to seasoned watchers, that suggested the institution wasn't debating whether the rumor was damaging, it was already calculating how much damage it could absorb. As speculation intensified, attention subtly shifted toward the future of the monarchy and the man expected to protect it. Prince William never addressed the rumor publicly, but sources close to royal operations suggested urgency behind the scenes. Not emotional urgency, procedural. Analysts described it as containment mode, where reputation risk is treated like a financial leak rather than a moral one. The priority wasn't disproving gossip, it was isolating fallout. Every internal lever that could be pulled without triggering headlines reportedly was. And that distinction mattered. Because when institutions act quietly instead of defensively, it often means they're preparing for outcomes they can't yet control. Online, the story mutated again. Proof was no longer demanded. Narratives replaced it. Theories positioned Meghan Markle as everything from a silent bystander to a hidden architect, depending on who was telling the story. None of it was verified, but it didn't slow the momentum. Meghan's long-running conflict with the royal press made her a perfect projection screen. To critics, her silence looked calculated. To supporters, it looked like restraint in the face of character assassination. Either way, the polarization guaranteed engagement. Algorithms rewarded outrage, not accuracy. And the louder the speculation grew, the harder it became for any official response to land without being interpreted as manipulation. In the middle of it all stood Prince Harry, framed by commentators as a man caught between loyalty and legacy. He said nothing, but his past words were replayed endlessly. Warnings about palace secrecy, trauma, and being trapped inside a machine that protects itself first. Viewers dissected his expressions from old interviews as if they were new evidence. Some claimed he knew more than he let on. Others believed he was learning the story in real time like everyone else. What mattered wasn't which was true. It was that he had become the emotional hinge of the entire scandal. If he spoke, it could collapse one side of the narrative instantly. If he didn't, silence would keep fueling every theory imaginable. As days passed, media analysts began warning that the danger wasn't exposure. It was weaponization. Once a rumor reaches critical mass, it becomes a bargaining chip. Silence can be traded. Timing can be exploited. Reputations can be nudged instead of shattered outright. There were whispers, never proven, about legal consultations happening quietly on multiple fronts. Not lawsuits, not accusations, just preparation. Because in high-profile power structures, preparation often matters more than action. Even a false claim can be devastating if it forces defensive decisions. And once those decisions are made, the damage becomes real, regardless of the truth. What began as curiosity hardened into skepticism. Polls showed declining trust not in individuals, but in the institution itself. Commentators pointed out a familiar pattern. Every major royal controversy of the last decade followed the same arc: initial denial, delayed response, partial admission, and long-term reputational loss. This time, the cycle hadn't even reached denial. That unsettled people, because when silence replaces denial, it suggests the institution is unsure which version of the truth it can safely stand on. And uncertainty, more than scandal, erodes authority. The monarchy wasn't being accused anymore. It was being doubted. At some point, the question quietly shifted from, "Is this real?" to "Would we even believe the answer?" In the age of leaks, deepfakes, and performative transparency, truth no longer arrives clean. Any evidence could be dismissed as staged, any denial framed as calculated, any confirmation labeled controlled. The royal family wasn't just facing a rumor, they were facing an audience that no longer trusted the referee. And that's the most dangerous position any institution can occupy. Because once credibility fractures, every future crisis becomes harder to survive, even when innocence exists. Eventually, headlines moved on, as they always do. Another scandal replaced this one. Another outrage claimed attention, but the residue remained. Search results, archived threads, quiet doubts that resurface every time a new controversy appears. No announcement ever closed the loop, no revelation resolved the question. And maybe that was intentional. Because in some cases, final answers cause more damage than permanent ambiguity. What lingered wasn't a conclusion. It was a feeling that something almost surfaced, that something was redirected, and that the walls of power had once again held, not because they were transparent, but because they were thick.